Hey, what's up everybody? I am so excited for today. We're gonna get a tour of Dr. Pamela Yee's organic home garden, an oasis of medicinal herbs and food that she and her family grows all year round in New York. Who knew? I'm Risa Morimoto, an integrative nutrition health coach and your host of Modern Aging, where we chat about innovative and holistic ways to elevate our health and well-being as we age. When you click on that little red button below that says subscribe on it, with that little bell next to it, you'll be notified whenever a new episode is uploaded. Also, be sure to check out our website at thisismodernaging.com. My guest today is Dr. Pamela Yee. She is a functional medicine doctor. So what does a functional medicine doctor do? Well, they seek out the root cause of an illness by looking at the entire body, as opposed to just diagnosing and treating isolated symptoms, which is what we're normally used to these days. And they use food as medicine, which is awesome. Dr. Yee's been growing her own food for over 12 years now. It's an absolute dream of mine to someday be able to grow my own food just like she does. She shares some incredible, valuable tips on how you too can create a garden full of amazing herbs and delicious fruits and vegetables, so check it out. Wow, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
So you've had this garden for how many years now?
For about 12, 13 years.
Wow. So it started very small, I'm assuming. You assume it was not this big when you first started.
No.
You're a doctor. You're a functional
Yes.
medicine doctor,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Is being a functional, well, why don't you explain to me what a functional medicine doctor is?
Sure. So my conventional training is as an internist. And then I did some work in, or fellowship in integrative medicine, which has a little bit different understanding than functional medicine. But functional medicine is basically a systems-based biology approach to trying to figure out why somebody has a particular condition. So it really looks
at the root
cause of the problem. So whereas conventionally, people who have digestive issues have, quote, IBS, it's more of a wastebasket term. So in functional medicine, there are so many different reasons why someone might have IBS. So it's really understanding the individual in the way that, in looking at how they grew up, what their exposures are like, what kind of food they eat or did they eat, how many antibiotics they were exposed to. So,
wow.
And so there's a lot of understanding in terms of evaluating a patient, right? It's not just tell me the problem, let's investigate and here's some treatments. It really is a deep dive into understanding.
That makes so much sense. Like, why isn't that regular conventional medicine?
Right, you would think. I mean, it takes time. And it takes time to understand a patient that, 15, 20 minutes isn't going to be enough to cover.
Right. And so, of course, food plays into that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Diet.
It's the foundational elements of functional medicine and integrative medicine.
So have you always been interested in food? And
probably because I like to eat.
Right.
So
me too.
In that respect, I really value food because it's such a form of enjoyment. And I think that's something that, really became instilled in me, from a cultural standpoint as a child.
Right.
So food was always, the center of the family, right? We gathered for it, we prepared it, and even I grew up in Queens, even in the small lot in Queens, we grew unusual vegetables that back in the 1970s you couldn't just go to Whole Foods and get.
Right.
So
there was no Whole Foods.
Right. And so it was something that, I realized every summer, my grandmother would grow these particular vegetables, and so it just became a part of what we do every summer. And then really it was a combination of my love of food, eating, and also the nutritional medicine that I was doing that sort of made it all come together to this.
That's so awesome. So let's learn some things about food today.
Okay.
What is this?
So this is a pawpaw tree. There's actually pawpaw. So there's actually a female and a male. So you need both of them to create fruit. And so what's unusual about this in New York is that the fruit has a particular tropical taste, like a combination of mango, banana, and pineapple. So it's kind of shocking when someone eats it and it's like, what hot weather country is this from? But it can grow in this particular climate.
And it looks like a mango?
It looks like a green mango when it's ready. And the reason why you haven't seen it is because it doesn't really transport well. So by the time it makes it to the farmer's market even, it's kind of past its prime.
Right, right. Well, that makes sense. What else do we got?
Medicinal things that are growing on the lower areas. So there's thyme, there's lemongrass, there's yarrow, there's lavender.
Wow.
This is the first year I've used yarrow along with elderflower because of the need for immunity support. It's like having an arsenal there should you need to go there.
That is amazing. Wow.
So this is lemongrass, and it's because I love to eat Southeast Asian food, and it's a little bit in its early stages, but by August the stalks are huge. It's also known as fever grass. So in the West Indies, this is something that's used as an antipyretic, right? So it brings down fever. It also calms down digestion, and it's really integral to Thai and Vietnamese food, which is my favorite. When this thing actually becomes a huge grassy bush, at the end I actually cut off the leaves, I dry it, and then you can make a tea. So it's something that you can grow, but you can plan to use this later on in the wintertime. So there are things that part of growing at this level is figuring out what can you store and use later. Right, so it's all nice to have tomatoes at the time, but obviously you want to make tomato sauce so you can have it later. And that's like an easy example. But this would be a particular herb that you can store and then you can use as tea in the coming months.
That is so awesome. That's yarrow, right?
So that's yarrow, which is all of that, and as a poultice, topically it has abilities to stop bleeding, but it also has activity against bacteria, viruses, fungi. So it's something that I had just made in this sort of immunity tincture, so it's part of that. And the thing too, not to discount, but it brings in pollinators. So, it has so many multiple levels, right? So it's beautiful. It brings
really
in
important.
pollinators,
Yeah.
right? And then it has a medicinal quality. So the idea of planting this way, it's known as permaculture, is that there are things with multiple uses. And the best example of that is Comfrey, which is over there. That's Comfrey, and Comfrey is interesting in that, it can't be ingested by humans at least. But it's used again as a topical agent. It was also known, I think, as bone knit leaf because traditionally it's been used to heal bones.
Wow.
So it has that type of...
as a topical?
Right, as a topical or a poultice. I've never tried that.
Wow.
But that's what people do use it for. But what I use it here for is that it's also known as what's called a dynamic accumulator. So what that means is that it sends deep, deep roots into the earth, and it mines minerals from much deeper than a lot of other plants, and then it brings it up into the leaves. So you have this very highly nutrient-dense leaf, which I then feed to the chickens. So it's also something that, when composted, will then eventually come back into your garden as well to feed the soil.
So it just gives your new plants extra nutrients as well.
Exactly. So it's medicine. It's food for the chickens. It's also a pollinator as well. It's got usually beautiful flowers at some point. And so it's a highly versatile plant.
And this is elderberry.
So this is elderberry or elderflower. And so you can kind of see, this was all flowers. These white flowers about, 2 to 4 weeks ago. So you can harvest the flowers to make a particular tincture. You can dry the flowers, make the tincture, and that serves as a way to use for immunity boosting later on
elderberry juice.
So elderflower. But as you can see, some of these other areas that I didn't get to pull off actually become berries. So at that moment, when berries are available, you can then also take that specifically and cook it down to also make another type of tincture, which has slightly different properties. So the flower is more for a general immunity boost, and the berries are very specific for respiratory and sinus issues.
Oh, wow. And you made your own tincture?
Yeah. So I just will grab it here. So this is what it looks like, which I did last year with the help of a friend who is an herbologist. But that's the flower sitting in a base with yarrow of alcohol, which it sits for 6 weeks. you strain it, and then you put it in a bottle to store.
Wow.
So
simple.
So simple. And it's actually much easier to do the flower than the berry because the berry is, you have to kind of macerate it, then you have to like strain it. So this is a simple way to access the medicinal properties.
I imagine this actually produces a lot.
It does.
I mean, this is a huge
more
tree.
than I can keep up with.
Yeah, you have a whole new side business here.
And underneath it, you can't. They're gone, but these are all strawberries as well.
Right. So, is there a reason why you put strawberries? And Henry apparently likes something.
Right. It's strawberry.
He's like a vegetarian dog.
No, I mean it was just they're not necessarily companion plants, but it's like using every available space for something. Some other things that are growing here, gooseberries. Some of the choices for what we decide to grow here is really based on some of the obstacles and problems. So there are red gooseberries, but they will get eaten up very quickly because birds can identify that quickly. So if I grow things that are a little bit off color, and this is another example as well, and by the way, there's comfrey growing here, and here's our very happy bee over here.
Oh. And then you have your little chickadees.
So we have chickens. We have 8 chickens now. They provide us with about, anywhere from 5 to 7 eggs a day. So it's nice to have that protein source. And, we know exactly, we're feeding them. We know exactly what we're feeding them, right?
Yeah.
So I mentioned the comfrey. So I know that there are vitamins and minerals in those leaves. And, we have things that we have to compost, but we end up giving it to them and they eat, and all sorts of scraps that are generally organic, because we know it's organic.
Right. Right.
So
I imagine that's really changes the taste of the egg.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could break one open and you can see, how orange the yolks are, which are really high in carotenoids and choline. So, when you see a pale yolk, I mean, there's a reason why it's pale and not as nutritious. So when you have something like a fruit or vegetable, if there's the intensity of the color is there, that tends to signify that there are a lot more in the way of antioxidants, polyphenols, flavonoids, things of that nature.
But eggs kind of had a bad rap for a while.
They did in terms of cholesterol, but the pendulum swings so much when it comes to nutrition, right? Whereas margarine used to be good, margarine's bad, and I think it will stay bad, but butter has also had that rap as well, and eggs as well. And I think it really is, this goes back to sort of, approaching a patient individually. So, when heart disease or cholesterol is an issue, there are a lot of biomarkers that you can actually look at to see changes when we make certain changes in the diet. So if I have a patient who, wants to lower their cholesterol, we take the eggs out, doesn't make a real big difference, then it's not so much of an issue.
Right.
And I'd say the majority of patients could sort of fit that category. This was just filled with mulberries that the birds mostly had, but we had a fair share.
What's mulberry good for?
Yeah, so berries have a high level of flavonoids. I think most of the research we see is about blueberries, because mulberries, do you ever see that even in Whole Foods or farmers markets? Not really. Maybe in the West Coast you do. So it's not very well studied, but I'd sort of categorize them in terms of health as some of the other sort of darker berries as well.
Well, berries in general, right?
Yeah, berries in general.
Really good.
But the darker ones, like blueberry, is known for resveratrol, which actually does have very specific indications in COVID potentially, but it also has a particular anti-aging compound because it induces the production of certain genes called sirtuins, which are associated with longevity.
Oh, wow.
So a really good one to
get a
eat.
Blueberry bush.
Yes. You don't need a lot of room. That's the thing. I mean, yes, we sort of took it to the nth degree here, but you can do a lot with 2 to 4 beds, which is these are the beds that we started everything. So this area is where we grow food, and this is what people typically think of when they think growing food. So these are the annuals, right? So most of these things have to be replanted, and when you grow something and you eat it, and you just have such pleasure from that, you just want to continue.
Yeah.
You want to continue, like, what more can I do? So it then expanded up this way. And then that area was planted afterwards when we did more research on permaculture and, how else to grow food on a different level.
So show me, like, what kinds of food do you grow here?
Here we have, and they all rotate depending on, the year. We have zinnias here, and the zinnias are, obviously we can't eat them, but I think it's part of the process. When you do eat, there is a certain amount of, beauty on the table that I think imparts part of the experience and part of the health experience too.
Right. No.
Something that you don't ingest, but can also bring health. So
it's very Japanese.
it is very Japanese, right? So and they are pollinators as well. That's great. These last two beds is what most people are very excited about in the summers is tomatoes. So
yes, we all love a good tomato.
We love a good tomato, and there are so many different varieties that you grow, and part of the excitement in the winter when you get a seed catalog is which one do I want to grow this year. So I have tomatoes that are ripe when they're green, and I have yellow, orange, red, medium sized, golf ball sized. So there are just different fun things that you can do with it. But I do a lot of paste tomatoes, which or plum tomatoes, which I tend to use more for sauce or salsa.
Right.
So there is planning also then again for the winter months in terms of having this food later on.
And then the basil's it's a good companion, right?
It's a good companion, and I just had extra real estate, so I stuck it in there. But there's a whole
because it prevents the bugs.
It does.
Right?
It does. Yeah. And the tomatoes somehow like it, right? There's this whole the whole thought about companion planting. So, for example, borage, which is another flower we'll talk about with medicinal qualities, they seem to like each other. So, what it specifically does, I don't know, but there's some plants that just sort of like to be with each other, and some that don't. Just in this corner, we have something here that's kind of a bit of an experiment. So, in these big black tubs, I'm trying to grow potato and sweet potato. So it's a way that someone can actually, without a lot of space, try to grow some root vegetables. And so it's a small area, and then at some point you can actually what is called grabble for them. So you can actually dig down deep and just if you need some potatoes,
wow.
just
So
take them out.
How many potatoes can you actually harvest out of something this small?
Well, the sweet potatoes are our first year experimenting with this, but the potatoes here, you can do probably a good 10 pounds at least.
Wow. Out of something this small?
Right. There's a whole way to grow potatoes where you actually have to hill them. So they grow, and the more dirt you put on top of that, then becomes more potatoes. So ideally, if something was much taller, you could even get more and more.
Wow. Well, can you transplant them then after a season or something like that?
No, so they'll go down in storage. So again, these are storage vegetables for the fall and winter. And you could take them the next season when they start making those little buds. You cut them out, and then you can use that as a seed potato to then plant for the next season.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But all worth it, my God.
Absolutely worth it.
I wish that they actually taught this in school.
This is a utility shed that we are using at the moment to cure garlic and shallots. So it takes about 2 to 3 weeks, but it's necessary for a good storage bulb. So this is a time where it makes that, really kind of papery skin so that we can use it, up until next spring.
Wow. Does this smell stronger or anything? Like, would you say than like if you buy it at the grocery store? Or...
Yeah, right. It's variety dependent, but yes, when you cut a freshly pulled garlic, it's like slicing into an apple.
Wow.
So it's much juicier. So it's likely that the medicinal compounds are much stronger. So this is the season to have it. So does the medicinal qualities go decrease over time? It's likely, but it's a different experience when you cut a really fresh garlic.
Wow.
Here is a bed that is very ready to pull. What happens earlier in the season, about a month and a half ago, is the garlic actually sends up what's called a garlic scape. And so it's stalk that wants to form a flower. Uh-huh. And when you cut it before that happens, you actually send more energy into making the bulb of the garlic rather than spending the energy making the flower. So in June, we have all these garlic scapes, which if you ran out of your garlic bulbs, you can just chop up and then use as a mild form of garlic. Right, so these are what it looks like, and you can see here, this is the part that wants to form a flower. You know, these have been keeping in the fridge for a good 3 weeks or so, and they keep for a very long time. You just slice them up, and then you just put it in an omelet. I mean, anything you would use garlic for, and especially if you want a milder form. I did a quiche.
Can I see?
Sure, I did a quiche with garlic scapes and Swiss chard the other day.
I mean, it looks like scallion, like
Yeah.
a hard scallion or
Yeah.
something. And feels like beans, but
Yeah,
it's
it feels
garlic.
like beans.
But it's
So you can do something with like what you would use for beans. You could actually grill these on the barbecue and just and they're a little bit charred and really
Oh,
nice
wow.
tasting. Yeah, yeah. You have to get creative with finding out what you can use these things for. It rained last night, so it might be a little bit difficult. But usually we don't harvest when it's that. See what this does? It starts to pull. So maybe we can't actually do it today. There. Okay.
Look how beautiful.
Yeah, it's nice, beautiful, full garlic.
Wow, that's beautiful. So you know it's ready to harvest at what point?
You know, because about more than a third of the leaves actually turn brown.
And what's this?
So other fun things here, these are Italian eggplants, and at the end is a Japanese eggplant.
Yes, I could tell.
It's a little petite. Japanese eggplants are great because you get the eggplant really quickly. You know, other larger Italian
right,
varieties, it's, you know, big honking eggplant that takes a while to get.
I just like the taste of Japanese and Chinese eggplant better.
Yeah, yeah. It's more subtle.
Yeah.
That particular trellis there, that's one of my favorites. That's Chinese long beans. So part of also growing is access to vegetables. Like, so when I was talking about when I was little and, you know, we were growing, you know, bitter melon and, you know, Chinese winter melon, you know, you couldn't get that easily. And same with this. You can find it, but it's much more difficult. So growing something that, you know, I really like is part of the reward. Right.
That's really amazing. And then you just buy the seeds online somewhere or
Yeah,
that sort of
buy
thing.
seeds. And then you can, you know, once they get mature too, you can then save the seeds. So here we have different types of basil. We have a really fun purple basil that, you know, when you chiffonade with the green is just fun to look at. Same flavor, maybe not as quite as pungent. The other fun thing that you can see here growing is these little flowers are called Johnny Jump Ups. They looked a lot more vibrant a few months ago, but they're edible. So you pick
really?
You pick them all and then you just sprinkle them on your salad to impart.
Can I taste one?
Yeah, very specific taste. I think it's more for the beauty element.
It's nice.
So once you grow it, you will find them all over. So kale, and this is what's growing in the kale. This is calendula. This is another medicinal, and it's another edible flower, by the way. So calendula, you know, is useful in eczema, any sort of dry skin conditions. That's what it's typically used for.
Wait, topically or you orally?
Topically, but you can also eat the leaves as well. So that's something that you can also just grab and sprinkle on your salad. And so kale, this is the kale that we have growing. We have two different types. We have a red Russian kale and a Tuscan or dinosaur kale. As the family of brassicas, which include broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, arugula, they have very potent health benefits. And one of its main components is something called sulforaphane. You find sulforaphane in higher concentrations in different brassicas. So for example, if you did broccoli sprouts, it probably has the highest concentration. But what sulforaphane is cool about is that it produces, when you ingest it, it triggers the release of a particular protein called NRF2. So NRF2 is one of these, it's known to be one of these master regulators of aging.
Oh, wow.
And it activates over 200 different genes so that, you know, you can flush out heavy metals or metabolize toxins or, and specifically also increasing genes that have tumor suppressor activity. So it's a really, you know, that family of vegetables we always try to have throughout the year. Here are carrots. Let's see if we can pull them. So,
oh, cute.
Beautiful carrot. And you can pull them when they're babies, but these are also my storage vegetables. So these will last for months in the refrigerator. And so you notice that carrots that are grown in cold winter months are much sweeter. And they have what's called a higher Brix level, which is, you know, kind of an indicator of high nutrient compounds. But an interesting thing too about this that I actually just learned is that the skin, which you also peel,
Right.
is actually higher in compounds called polyacetylenes that have anti-tumor activity, that have anti-infective activity. And so when you peel away the outer skin, that has the highest levels of the polyacetylenes.
Oh, so we should not be doing that.
So just wash it, it's not as pretty, and eat it.
Oh, your Swiss chard is beautiful.
Swiss chard, very easy one for people to grow. I mean, it's
Really?
it doesn't mind. It's a leafy green that doesn't mind the hot weather. So, and it's beautiful. So I grow this variety called rainbow Swiss chard. You know, there's also this what I like to call nose to tail eating of vegetables. So, you know, most people will just eat the leaf and not the stem.
Right.
And what you can do, you can still, you know, cut them up and saute it, but you can also pickle it.
Oh, yes.
So I've pickled the stems as well. These are the shallots, you know, example of the shallots. So you plant one shallot and you get this much.
Wow.
And so these will need to dry. It's pretty wet. But easy thing to grow. Pests don't like it. So even if you have a groundhog, they won't touch this.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just going to move on.
Right.
This is kind of like my dream, right? To create my own home garden, my own organic, and grow my own food. It's clearly very intimidating. Look at you looking at your garden. But, you know, I would love to encourage more of this, right? Just for everyone to be able to grow their food. I mean, are there certain things, I don't know, some simple things that people should kind of keep in mind if it's something that they want to try to do at some point?
Right. So we started small. Everybody can start small with planters, right? And even if you have a plant of herbs on the deck and then you go out and you harvest it, you know, when you actually put that into your food, I think everybody would agree that the food tastes better. You know, when you've grown it from seed and you've cultivated it and nursed it and, you know, brought it to the table, that particular food is so much more tasty than if you went and got it at the farmer's market even. So starting small is one thing, and then thinking about what is it that you like to eat, you know, and then going with, you know, and the common thing is tomatoes.
Right.
And that's the thing that's the most easy to grow and very rewarding. So, I mean, I would say start small, and then, you know, if it's something that, if it's a passion that continues, then naturally, like something like this may happen.
Right.